Turn on a mic. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is James PFP. This is a very short Banjocast, an update Banjocast. Because I had to spend several hours catching up with my very good friend Blender. And I want to show what I did before I get back to work later on this evening. Just to make it abundantly clear, my time was not wasted. I've got the speedometer for Challenger working properly, like to my own satisfaction, and it bears my numbers out early on, like my back of the napkin numbers, so to speak. So I'm gonna scroll through this without using any sound, and I had to trick the darn thing around this. I'll explain it afterward, after I played it through once. Here's how it goes. This in the bottom here is the one little piece of script that I had to provide Blender to make sure that it updates the frames, updates the counter frame by frame, but it will do that when it renders too. So I'll run the script. I've got it highlighted to make it nice and easy to see. But now if we go through the frames, we'll see good old forward moving. I'm going to fast forward like 10 frames at a time. Here the car starts moving. Aha! You can see these purple frames are highlighted and changing numbers. There's a position X for the object. There's a delta X being calculated. If we look really carefully, there's a little object following behind. And then there's a V calc. This number is in meters per hour, or kilometers per hour if you multiply it by 1,000th, 0.001. And that's what happens here. The V convert in the script changes the value of V calc by multiplying it by 0.001 to get a kilometers per hour, and then dividing it by the correct ratio to get miles per hour conversion. 1.61. So that's how I'm getting that number, just by using these basic. And I'm going to show you something else too before this animation is done, but that's the explanation. Took me a while to get my head around how to do that. First time I'd ever made it work. Glad that I can show it off, because this has never been explained to me on YouTube. Hey YouTube, want to know how to do this? This is in Blender. Oh wow. Yeah, he takes a little jet ahead there when we get to this intersection. We're already ahead in time. This is after Challenger's passed one area already. So he jackrabbits ahead to this intersection where he gets stopped, I think. What Challenger is this? Or what controller is that? Oh, TBD, right. TBD hasn't popped into sight yet. I could actually highlight both of these just to make them pop out a little more. Oh shoot. Well, let's fast forward in time a little. Watch what happens when we fast forward 10 frames in time. It doesn't update. There's a reason for it. It doesn't have the right frame rate. It expects to get a measurement of time on a frame-to-frame tick with an average of the distance, the delta V, being figured out. This is awesome. Being figured out from a point in time 10 frames in the past. So that's what I've got all rigged up here. There's an empty measuring where what the value was 10 frames in the past, and so there's a bit of a ghost. I call it a ghost controller. So there's a set of data being explicitly passed forward to give a delta V value, and then I multiply that. Well, I work with the delta V's in order to get what the actual speed is. Very, very simple. since there's one on the north-south and one on the east-west. You can use the square to do that. Very simple. This first time I've properly applied how I might get a derivative off of Blender without having to do it all in script. Very, very happy. Very happy. I hit play and let it animate, like let the animation play, but then we get sound and stuff don't necessarily want to hear, or it would cause a bit of a, you know, go around. You can see that I've got miles per hour put a little too close there. I can explicitly move either one of these and they'll still be tracked. They'll still be tracked to the correct point in space, which is kind of nice. Leads me to say that this one is following the controller for Challenger, and this one also the same controller, but it passes a value explicitly forward. Position X, Y, current position, and then the previous X, Y is removed from current position, and you would get previous value from the ghost frame. So this is the average speed he had to travel. This is the slowest average speed he had to travel in order to cover the distance. So I'm going to do another set of curves to show what it might have looked like had he followed a normal pattern, a more normal pattern of travel, which, you know, I don't know what city limits posted was. I got to look at Joel's videos again and see what the posted city limits are. But you should certainly be within city limits and probably taking chances right now of getting pulled over for why are you going too slow. Well, it's a state of emergency, I guess. Now, when I tried to fast forward there a second ago, you can see it's just afternoon here in the clock. Again, if I fast forward here in the window, at 10 frames it'll go to 0. I tried something else, but we're going to go through this once. It is possible for the advancing frames, advancing frames at a 10 count. So animation playing at 10 times regular speed. It is possible to get an update at that speed by advancing or using the script method as I'm using here. But what I was doing was not making the measurement over the space of 10 frames, but making the measurement over the space instead of 5 frames. And it is more precise. The 10 frame method gets me the back of the envelope calculation. The more precise method, I want to change the curves a little. I know I can tell where the curves need to change really easily because the speedometer is very sensitive. It yields round about the same number either way, but with the 5 frame method it says we're doing 10 miles per hour and no greater. But on the 10 frame method it says we're doing almost 11 miles per hour, which is what I expected. Somewhere in between. I think the 5 frame method is probably better. And it means a slightly different V calculation, very slightly different. Currently, delta x is the square root of delta x plus delta y, both of them been squared and added together, and then divided by the time value, which currently is set to 10 frames, so therefore 0.333 in seconds. If it's in 5 frames, the time value goes to 0.1667, and it gives a better. It does give a better approximation, I think, based on the curve. That's merely based on a keyframe curve that I've placed in Blender space. This is well worth an explanation. If you haven't seen me excited about anything yet, you're going to see me excited about this one. This worked out so well, I couldn't believe it. When I finally got it working, I was like, oh, wow. Because those purple numbers changing was one thing, but then to get the... I knew if I could get all the purple numbers working it didn't require very much to get the text itself to update on a frame by frame basis. So the minute the speed changes, it gets updated. It could also be more precise with the 10 frame method, because right now it's being rounded up to a single decimal point in miles per hour. This is the speed which I calculated the first time around for him to have gone through this intersection. The Camry didn't do it that fast. Camry was doing closer to that. This revolutionizes my Blender experience, friends. I don't know about you. If you're a new user to Blender, I'm looking forward to explaining how to do this. Very, very much. This would make a lot of animations much more interesting. And I can't believe there isn't an easier way to do this. I can't believe it hasn't already been coded in. So if this helps anybody else, dang, I'll be glad to write the tutorial or broadcast it. All this time, Challenger has been, we're assuming, engaged in some sort of standoff. I'm assuming anyhow. He's getting ready to reverse up the hill now. So there he goes. The next thing I'm going to do is put in a explicit zoom controller off to the side of this camera, which will be clickable and draggable to get the zoom to change while the animation is playing. I know how to do that again now. That's so dreadfully easy, it's not even funny. That bears my numbers up for what I thought with Mr. Gilmore here. I got to tweak the curve again. Moment of impact, 1 and 2. And if I go back in time here by 10 frames, we see it gets a really high number there. The numbers go up, but if we frame by frame, the numbers don't show any wonkiness like that. Braking and then accelerating again. This is surprising me. This is not what the numbers I thought were going to be. Although around 20 by the time he's here makes sense. He has to be doing about 10 meters a second. And right now, he ain't. I should really put a VCalc meters per second separately to this, just to make it explicit. Because I would just as soon have this in meters per second as anything. And so I could put more than one speed indicator on it anyhow. The other thing I was thinking about doing is, well, if I can get this number in text is one thing, and putting it in the body of text is about the hardest thing to do in Blender. If I wanted to use these numbers and convert them into rotational values, or make a speedometer which has a swinging arm with numbers on the outside and the inside, that I could do too. That wouldn't require the text, this stuff. That's the beauty of it. This is all it would be required to drive a thing on the camera which shows what the speedometer is, or anchored to the tracker. You can see this kilometers per hour down here. Currently 22, 25, going to hit 30 now. Going to hit 50 up this hill. Well, 25 and slowing down. Maybe not 50. This also surprised me. I think the curve I got put in on over here must be wrong. Says he makes about 30 kilometers an hour before slowing down. and then after accelerating away from the Jeep, only makes 30 again, which to me seems way slow. So I've definitely got to do some thinking about what I'd assumed. Okay. See how it clears the frames real quick there as it figures out, oh, these numbers are all way wonky. Let's clear them. I could clear them quicker than that in this script, but let's not worry about that right now. The script doesn't do the heavy lifting here. These drivers do. And I can explicitly fool with the drivers by hovering over them and entering a value. I want a really big box though, so I don't lose the values when I get them. For example, vcalc loses 2 zeros every time I do that. But it's set up for kilometers per hour right now. So let's get vcalc. Okay, let's leave vcalc at kilometers per hour. So let's change the timing. 1667. So now the driver reads the value that I want. Square root of dx, dy, which are already squared values. I squared them when I put them in delta x, delta y. I could actually put down a squared symbol on those to make it more explicit, I guess. But yeah, this is what these are set up to do. Current x minus previous x, and then squared. Star star 2, that's squared. And vcalc is done, but that means I also have to change the data which I'm providing to vcalc, which means I got to get the Ghost Challenger object loaded, and I need to make sure that its keyframe data is being passed to my object at the right moment in time. So this is controller for Ghost Challenger. Yeah, okay. And I want its X, Y, and Z locations. First frame currently at, is it 247? Oh, it's 242. Okay, so I go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. And I grab on the X and I hold shift and I move it back 5 frames. And I'll see the frame counter turn yellow in the window above if I get it right on the right one. Okay, need to zoom in more. Main thing is I got all the keyframes are selected. I'm not going to scale them. I'm going to physically move them. This is a bit finicky, but it ain't that hard to do. I had to make a single copy of the keyframe data, put it on another object, another empty. Grab X. 2, 3, 4, 5. Turns yellow. I got it on the right frame now. There's the keyframes. So now there's a how to put this. If I look at this one, this is Challenger Ghost. This is Challenger Default. If I select them both and zoom in, we'll see there's an overlap. And that overlap is 5 frames in the difference for all data that's keyframed. All rotations, all locations. So anytime we look at where there's an extreme curve, there's the delta. That's the delta I'm measuring. That's where I'm getting my tangential value, essentially, for speed. Take that delta, square it. Take the other delta, square it. Add both of them. Take the square root. That's the overall delta. That's the overall distance difference. in X and in Y. So that's how it works. It's really cute. I have to admit, I didn't think it would be that cute. And nobody's talking about it, man. Nobody's put up a friggin'... I can't believe nobody put up a tutorial on it. I'm like, oh, wow, that's going to be down the line. Consequently, I don't need to see the Ghost controller, but I like having something that's a visual reminder. And now that I've changed the script below, well, I haven't actually changed the script any. I've only changed... all I've actually changed here is the one calculation, the V calculation, which is the square root over the distance of 5 frames, not over the distance of 10 frames. So there actually is a bit of a question. What's going to be more accurate, 5 frames or 10 frames? More accurate in the sense that it's measured over a shorter period of time, and then there's an extrapolation by multiplication, essentially. To get a second, we have... Well, if I wanted a full second, I'd really get the best measurement of what the distance is in a second. If I take a smaller chunk, it doesn't necessarily give me a better number. We'll see what the difference is now, because we're going to let it play through. But I've saved it. I really want to run the script again. Here's as the challenger starts moving. Watch what happens when I go forward by 10 now. I actually get a speed number, but it's not the right number. It's a number which is accelerated by some larger amount. See if I go by the frame by frame. Well, he does go ahead and speed there a little bit. Seems a little bit big for it compared to the last one. And I really mean it. I'm going to do another... I'll show how these driver things work before I finish this short stream. This is not going to be no 6-hour epic. I'm really quite excited about this speedometer bit. Getting the text speedometer working is nice for an animation. Very, very nice. Had to have been traffic turning that held him up. Did anything hold up the bus? Or should I extrapolate the bus's position back? I guess I should. Let's go 10 frames at a time. Notice that the speed goes up a bit. 10 frames at a time, it gets a different reading. But this is because it's using 5 frames to calculate. So it kind of anticipates what the speed's going to be before it gets there. Seems a little more responsive at 5 frames than it does at 10. It's the same data one way or the other. We can change the responsiveness by physically moving the location of these keyframes. And then I get the delta by adding up the difference. You can see it really clearly here as it gets out from underneath. The difference between this X, which is the controller, and this smaller X, which is lagging behind it, the ghost. So the ghost is the position that it was 5 frames ago. Notice that it was saying 10.9 before, but now it's saying only 9.6. I think this is a good indication of what speed might have actually been if it had been this slow. Ask me why I used the 6th. Why would I rather use the 6th? Well, it's 30 frames a second. So that being said, at 30 frames a second, I was surprised that Gilmore got enough of a speed measurement of the car at the very first like 10 or 15 frames that he shot. It wasn't fast enough of a frame rate to see the wheels spinning and be able to count the spokes or something and be able to tell like physically how fast was the wheel moving. Could try to model that too if I had enough frames. This gets me into, you want to do a 3D model or not, James? And I'm like, well, like a full 3D map. If I'm going to be doing the speeds like this. So there currently aren't any stops plotted in here either. I'm going to be doing another curve for Mr. Challenger. But this worked out really well. So it lost a full mile per hour from the frame conversion, 5 frames to 10 frames. 15 frames might be interesting, which would make it very simple math. 15 frames would give it the best conversion in terms of the VCalcs rate. Shice, let's try it. I'm in a adventurous mood. That's 0.5 times 3600. But now I have to once again enable that darnable controller. So, Ghost Challenger controller. Let's go forward. But I want to move it from the 5 frame gap to a 15 frame gap. So it goes from 37 to 47. Roll back in space. Zoom in on it. Grab on the X holding shift to like precisely select it or precisely position it. We had Challenger around the corner, didn't we? Great. Look at the rapid change in speed. Now at 15 frames, so it calculates distance with a gap of 15 frames. So every half of a second, it takes a measurement. 10 frames a second, it's coming in at half the speed, I think. This is going to say he's going pretty fast down that hill. Interesting artifact we got going on here. This is probably because the floats. There's a lot of floating point calculation going on, which is why I wanted to do it with 0.5 rather than 0.333 or 0.1667. You can really see the gap now between the ghost object and the lead object. So I'm thinking of rendering an animation using, we're following nothing but Challenger and providing data for it like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be tagged right to the object, but I kind of like that. I really like this part. It stays tagged to it. So I could zoom out, not worry about where the position is, use the speed indicator to keep an eye on it. So I'm simulating a zoom by rolling the mouse at the moment, but I'm thinking what I'll do is Do you know, I've been doing this all along. I don't have to use the friggin' past part of it here, do I? Oh, right. Camera. I haven't got the camera selected. Never mind. Camera has controls too. Like I can get rid of this gray bit. This darker grayed out area. Sliding camera control, man. This is going to be fun. It's going to work great. Put it over here. I'll be able to slide it up and down and get me a zoom. It'll zoom this area for it and still maintain these dark borders. Okay, it says accelerating up the hill. How little, just look at, I mean, seriously, look how little code this takes. I'll make it bigger. It's incredible how little code it took. Import the Blender Python interface. Make a variable called scene, which is the context of the current scene that it's in. Object is the scene object speedometer challenger, which I've currently got highlighted. It's got all these values attached to it, the custom values, so I can call those explicitly. VFloat for conversion is going to be object vcalc, and then do this to it. Convert it this way. Get a string of characters to put into the text body with this format, or format this with this data from vconvert. Then explicitly make the object's data body, which is the value for the text that I enter in here explicitly with like a keyboard. This string. Nothing to it. Afterwards, recalculate text, which is this defined that's a subroutine function. I think he's going to be doing everything faster, slightly faster, according to this is like the 15 frames method. That bears up. Most of those numbers seem around about the same. I guess the larger the gap, the better. The 15 allows it to at least update during a 10 frame skip. You'll get like 3 updates in 10 frames as opposed to none. Now it says he's doing well over 30. And I think this is the better rate. Funny, right? Ah, mathematics. So, now that I got that done, I don't really need to see this script window. I can turn that on to anything else. But I do need to pop this one over, because I'm interested in adding a controller for this camera. Going to do it by using this driver, what they call drivers. So what I'll do is, first, I've got my cursor already over here in space. Going to add anything. And empty will do. Arrows will do. Single arrow will do. Doesn't matter what it is. Let it be a sphere. I'm already using one sphere with the camera. Empty 003. This is going to be camera. Let me think. Camera zoom. And really, I want this to be ortho camera zoom. Which is probably a overly detailed name, but we'll see about that. Ortho camera zoom. Hello, ortho camera. This location in X doesn't matter, but I'm going to make this higher. Not that it matters. This is going to be locked on to what the camera is and with an offset. So it doesn't matter what the values happen to be right now. They're going to follow the camera around automatically. But they're not going to be in the image area. They're going to be off to the side, invisible. Hey, who's up? Hey, Sai, how you doing? Did you just see what I was playing back through there? I finally got something working in Blender, properly working. I can calculate speed from video data now for this. It's built into the functions for what's happening. But it took me a night of like fooling around with it. So let us make this work. Going to physically make the location X and Y 0. Leave the Z at 13. And over here on constraint, copy location from camera. I think it's camera 001. Unless I missed my guess, that's the camera I'm using. Haven't had a chance to see this stuff. Oh, I did not get your message. I'll check. I did see that there's a whole bunch of notifications, but I've been so busy freaking out over the fact that I got this working. I haven't done anything else. Not yet, anyhow. Copy location. So this is controller positioning. Positing will do. I posit this is a controller. I'm going to give it an offset. Grab on there. So now it's over on one side of the camera and it's up in the air too. So if I was looking in perspective, it wouldn't be visible. Here's the fun with Mr. Controller. You can take an offset, huh? Wonderful. I will definitely. Free time as soon as I got this stream done, and I'm trying to make this a fast one, like less than 6 hours. Controller's over here on the side of the camera. I'm going to go back to the controllers like object data. It's all pretty much under one place here. Custom properties add. I might need to do that in a second, but first I want to look at what its transforms are and if I can apply some transform locks to it. Delta transform relations groups. All right, there's another constraint here. Add object constraint. So copy local or copy location. But now I want to limit distance. Limit rotation. Yeah, limit distance is what I want to do. I don't need to worry about minimum X's and Y's. They're going to be locked. And they're not being copied either. But minimum X and maximum X and maximum Y as well. Well, don't need to use X either. We just need Y. It's just a scale, right? So minimum Y will be 0, but maximum Y will be whatever the maximum scale of the camera is. So we need to see the camera. There's the camera. Currently orthographic scale set to 128. Minimum value, minimum useful value. Gee, it's going to be something like, can I see it getting as low as 80? Maybe as low as 80. And maybe a heck of a lot higher. Ortho camera zoom. So here it is, ortho camera zoom. Minimum Y, maximum Y. Maximum Y, let's go 256. Minimum Y, let's go 80. So right now, if I grabbed that object, wherever it happens to be, oh, limit location. Not going to work too well where it's copying location and it's outside the value. Offset's working. I can follow X's. No, that wouldn't work either. Shoot. Oh, this is going to fool me up if I got to think about it too much. What I was thinking on doing was physically moving. Yeah, I got to turn that off. X got moved over all the way to 77. Now I want it over here more. It allows copy location, but down I put offset on so it gets the offset. Don't target Y. Ah. Yes, this will work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it toward the bottom. If I grab it right now, I can move it anywhere. So when it's at the bottom of the image, it's going to be at low zoom. And when it's at the top of the image, or at the top of the camera area, it'll be at high zoom. So I need to limit X and Y here, even though they're being even though it's tracking X. Oh wow, it's got to track both of them. So if I apply that offset, it's going to like throw it way off down there. Ooh, this is a tricky one. Could do this another way, which is to use a driver to control where these two are. I was thinking maybe I could use a scaler to do it too. I could scale this up and apply the scale against some number in the orthographic scale. That'd work. Like 80 times 1, and then make it scale up to only point, like from 0.1 to 1 or something. I don't know. Copy location is correct, I think, but maybe I've got the wrong constraint. Try another one. Add object. So limit distance. Might be what I need to do actually, but I've never used one before. Limit location. Negative 200. Okay, minimum. This will work. Negative 500 and maximum 500. I'm only really interested in limiting these. The X value I could lock. The Z value I can lock. Rotations and scales I don't care for. All I care for is if I grab it, it's not going to go anywhere but up and down. Right? And as the map updates, I want it to follow along with the camera. So there it goes, and it stays at the zoom that it's at in space. So if I want to update the zoom, it'll have an explicit value that's defined here. Thing is, I got to put it in space against the camera and then set some kind of offset against it. This is easily done. The value I'll be using is this Y value. So the location of this ortho camera zoom is the value I'll be using to control the zoom on the camera itself. Here's the camera. Orthographic scale, similar to zoom. Going to add a driver and manually create it. And now it's really important that I select this, well, not that next, but have that so I can see it somewhere on screen. Relatively easy. Ooh, I didn't want to go up. If I click down here on the graph window, switch mode over to drivers, I've got one now for the camera. It's this orthographic scale driver. If I turn on the panel control, it asks me what I want to do with this driver, scripted expression or some kind of value or whatever. I'm going to go scripted expression. It's going to have a variable. We're going to call this ortho scale. The object which we get the variable from, well, we can use the eyedropper to get it. I want that empty. Ortho camera zoom, and it's going to be the Y location, which currently is negative 144. Useless to me. I want this to be a base level of 80. Whenever it's below a certain number, it's going to be at least 80. So let me think. What I need is ortho camera zoom, whatever that number is, plus whatever it needs to be at 80. So 144 plus 80. Gee whiz, that's 224. Is that right? But now there'll be a one-to-one correspondence with the location in space. Ortho camera zoom plus 224. Oh. Totally used the wrong one there. Ortho scale would be better. So now we see orthographic scale's got a purple number, which is totally controllable by moving that one. But when we move it, it moves sometimes into scale and sometimes out of scale. Ah, that's wild. Well, yeah, because orthographic scale is not going to operate. I'm gonna have to do that with X too. It's a simple fix. X needs to be allowed to move with scale. Even so, that is kind of useful. I can manually check what scaling might want to be for certain spots by grabbing that now and rolling it one way or the other. Particularly when things are playing back. So yeah, we're all the way back to the this part where he just starts. Let's see what the numbers say here. So now we're playing back. If I right clicking, ooh. Can't really right click and drag it while the animation's playing. If I did it this way, I think I could. And that's all I would have to animate right now to change the scale. I'd just animate that sphere. See a bit of a jitter there in the frame step. Even if that ain't a perfect controller, it's a good enough one for the purposes of what I want to do. So now that I got a scale I like, let's get the MPH and that highlighted. I've turned off the map overlay as well. And that's pretty much ends my plan for broadcasting this first hour of Thursday. Well, Thursday afternoon. I haven't got much else to do now for the next little while. Get a rest. I'm really glad I got this working. Getting the text to update in a block like this in Blender, I'm telling you now, There's very few straightforward tutorials on it. It's dead simple is why, I guess. Anyone who knows what they're doing doesn't need to be told. Anyone who's learning, you got to learn on your own. Well, I don't mind showing you how. This at 15 frames here, we're doing a measurement. Yeah, I love this part. This part is really cool. He's trying to decide with the numbers, eh? Like he's having a harder time with it. FP, man, floating point. It's not getting the data fast enough. Several times a frame, like several. If it's 5 frames, the numbers are more stable. If it's 10 frames, the number are better average. If it's this way, I don't want to update every frame. Update once every 5 frames, maybe. I don't know. That's the trickier. That's a trickier deal. "11 miles per hour is what I expected. In other words, the car is traveling 5 meters every second. And frame step of 10 will get me that. Frame step of 5 won't, and a frame step of 15 will. Boy, am I glad I was using Pioneer yesterday. Pioneer really makes this easy. Let alone Blender. Is really not jumping that much in reality. I think that's it's more to do with the stuff that's happening on the computer at the moment. Might also be to do with the scaling. Oh, it left the scaler all behind, didn't it? So I can just manually update that one too. That would be pretty cool. Is that more stable at closer in? Yeah, that's probably a better move. Still got a little bit of a fool up there. I don't know why. Like it skipped a frame or something. So it got twice the distance for one. Numbers are rock solid otherwise. Walking speed of a car around 5 meters a second. If you can keep up with a car at 11 miles per hour, you're doing all right. You can do it on a bike. Yeah. Thankfully located scale control. Can zoom in that way, can zoom out that way. We actually have a graphic representation. If he's making in 15 frames, if the distance is his own car length, then he makes his own car length twice in 1 second. Taking a peek at this last time, and I watched this twice and I was like, wow. Wow, this is easy. Definitely got to update that curve. Well. That pretty much concludes my demonstration. When I resume, yeah, this is the kind of thing I'll be probably looking to explain in more depth. And if anyone wants a specific tutorial on it, I can specifically show with a fresh blender project, totally from scratch, how to rig that kind of a deal to get an animated anything working with a text block. I think I'm getting pretty good at that too. So, my name is James PFP. This is the Banjocast, pitchforks, flaming torches, sans banjo, but sans python. Thanks for watching. Comment below. Please subscribe and don't forget to thumbs up. I'll talk to you later.